The Spin-Off Podcast Network. Skinny are helping you show how smart you are with the 1Q quiz, an all-new, super challenging and super quick daily quiz built by the Spin-Off. Every Monday, Skinny are giving you the chance to prove you're smart with the Skinny Extra Credit question. Get it right, and you'll get the chance to score yourself some Skinny Extra mobile credit, so you can text, call, or even video call your group chat and gloat about how big your brain is. T's and C's apply.
The Fold is brought to you by O Media, making brands unmissable and public spaces better across Aotearoa. No mai hoki mai ki a The Fold e mihi nei ko tangri tōku ingoa. My guest this week is Tim Harper, who is the CEO of Glorious, which, as you'll hear, is a company that was not a thing a year ago and now very much is a thing. And the reason why, in that tiny span of time, Glorious has grown and why I wanted to have him on this podcast is that Glorious is a participant in the NFT world, which most of what NFTs are known for right now in the sort of popular consciousness is a kind of a general scamminess or an environmental destruction and or a sort of financial chaos. And that is a big part of the sector. But it's not the whole story, and it's also why this space is interesting, why NFTs and crypto and Web3 have become an increasing area of fascination for me and for many other people is because they contain seeds of being so much more than that, of solving for really pernicious problems of our kind of current structure of our media, creative economies, and actually going above that of society and democracies in general. I genuinely don't think I'm overstating the potential use case for them in doing that. At the same time, I am a journalist by nature, and so I have a level of, I hope, healthy skepticism, balancing the fascination. And so anyway, Glorious is there's a bunch of people involved in it as founders, from famous names like Dan Carter and Sky TV co-founder Craig Heatley to Tim and Murray Tom, who together made the Great New Zealand Songbook and a bunch of other projects which have had a thing in common, which is that they've entered a marketplace, whether that's publishing or music, and they've done something different that has been wildly successful. And I think that's really important to understand in terms of the CVs of these people, is that they saw something that no one else could see and created a product which no one else was making it, and they found a market for it. So Glorious has gone into NFTs, but rather than doing what is the sort of default of this post-Bored Ape Yacht Club. Now, for a lot of people listening, they might not know what that is if you don't Google it and maybe read the Wikipedia. But basically, there are a lot of concepts in here which are related to that, but we've tried to kind of unpack them along the way. What Glorious has done is shy away from that end of it and create very tiny limited editions and create them with legacy artists and some of the most famous artworks in New Zealand history by the likes of Gordon Walters and Rita Angus, and do it on a carbon positive blockchain rather than Ethereum or any of the other blockchains which are out there at the moment. And these are deliberate acts to sort of essentially differentiate themselves from that end of the market. They are very much in New Zealand, focused on New Zealand right now, but their eyes are up, they're having conversations internationally, and the opportunity for them, I genuinely believe, is a global one. And because this thing is so new and is being written live in front of us, Glorious could be the next enormous New Zealand technology success. And we'll see how it all plays out. There's a lot of people, there's a lot of energy, there's a lot of capital, there's a lot of concern, rightly, about this whole sector. But my general position is this thing is happening, whether we like it or not, and scrutinizing it, thinking about it, and hopefully working on some of its issues while sort of enjoying and teasing out some of the upside is where a sort of a good default rational position should be. Aware that other people will disagree with it. That's all good. Anyway, this is quite a different and potentially a bit more of a buzzy episode of The Fold. Really hope you enjoy it. Thanking Vodafone for making this possible. A great technology partner of ours at the Spinoff. Make them yours as well. Go to vodafone.co.nz for that. This is Tim Harper, CEO of Glorious, on The Fold. Kia ora, Tim, and welcome to The Fold.
Oh, thanks, Duncan. Great to be here.
I'm really excited to have you on because I, like many people, I think, have been reading about NFTs and Web3 and crypto and DeFi and all these big sort of heady ideas and watching the thing, the good and the bad of it roll out recently, but not really had an opportunity to discuss it with anyone who sort of knows it to the extent that you do. And so really happy to have you on the podcast. So Glorious is a very new company, and it's selling something which is in some ways very new, but also the way that you're doing it involves, threading back into some of the oldest, most venerable media forms of all. So it's kind of it's this mix of the bleeding edge of the future and the very ancient. Do you want to just give me the pitch to explain yourself?
Well, firstly, it's funny. We're sitting here, and a year ago I didn't even know what an NFT was. And then at the end of last year it was the Collins Word of the Year, and here I am now, a supposed sort of expert on the subject, running an NFT sort of company. It's just hilarious to me how fast this space is moving. So I feel like I might be maybe potentially one step behind you, because, you've been following this space probably a little more closely than I've been trying to sort of, build a business around what we think is the sort of sweet spot and the interesting place where NFTs can intersect with art, and particularly fine art. So that's really where Glorious landed. It was a year ago. Murray, Tom, my creative partner, we've done many productions over the years for the last sort of 13 years, the Great New Zealand Songbook and the Great New Zealand Cookbook and a few international flavors of those. He texted me saying, "Do you know what an NFT is?" And I said, "No idea." And he said, "Google it and join me on a call later on that day." And so I did. And I jumped on a call later on that day, and there's Dan Carter over in the corner. I'm like, "Oh, kia ora, Dan." We went to the same high school, but we never met before, and that was kind of fun. And then Scott McCleaver, who is one of the co-founders of Glorious, he really is kind of I affectionately call him our crypto geek. And he works for PwC, and he speaks into sort of, all things crypto. And he was just explaining to us, guys, these are the future. This is a way for you to sort of prove authenticity of something and scarcity of digital assets, which we've never been able to do before. And so as he was sort of talking, my mind was sort of rattling away. And I had just finished this production called The Offering Project. And Murray and I had been working on this for many years. We took 12 old hymns, and then we asked 12 of New Zealand's top recording artists to record those hymns. So Holly Smith and Teeks recorded Whakaarea Mai, Dave Dobbin recorded Amazing Grace. And then we asked 12 of New Zealand's top artists to paint an interpretation of those hymns. So Dick Frizzell did the Amazing Grace one, for example, and Ruben Patterson did Whakaarea Mai. And the whole idea behind it was that we were just sort of kicking something on, hymns which have been, they're not cool at all, but they're kind of been around for 100 years, and they were written out of times of adversity. And, we thought, well, let's sort of kick them into the future, have some fresh recordings of them. And the artists loved it because it was sort of a great collaboration together. And I was sitting there hearing about NFTs going, geez, imagine if we'd released the Offering Project with the way that Murray and I had always intended, which is you've got this beautiful art in front of you, and then you click play and you hear the music behind it, and you've sort of got this new emotional kind of experience going on. And the Offering Project too, we raised $500,000 and we gave every cent to the Salvation Army. And I thought, and as Scott was describing NFTs to me and the way these smart contracts worked, I thought, gosh, here is an opportunity for artists to collaborate, find a new sort of creative playground, I guess, to play in. And, you could be raising money for, charities. And I think we've all got charities that we love. And for me, didn't know anything about the Sallies before the Offering Project. I now just adore them. And I just love what they do. And I just sort of thought, gosh, the NFTs, we've got this incredible opportunity now to, it's this whole, and you will understand this, but this whole idea of secondary royalties, or royalties that are embedded into the smart contract, meaning that an artist can actually make a percentage on future sales.
Yeah, the smart contracts thing is, I think, one of the most sort of fascinating and kind of revolutionary elements underpinning this, and I want to sort of get into that. But and it's a strange thing, this whole market, right? Because one of the things I love about it is that it is so young and so raw, and the fact that neither of us had heard of NFTs a year ago. And they didn't really exist as a notion until a few years ago. So there are no people who have. There isn't like a calcified sort of structural way of doing things. There aren't experts and people and gatekeepers in the same way that there previously were. That's all what makes it so sort of fun. Like, it's being written right now.
Absolutely.
The downside, I guess, is that. There are lots of concepts that require explaining to people, and I guess a huge part of a market maker. You're both a market maker and a product creator at Glorious. Is that you have to explain some of these concepts. So, to people who might not have known them or only kind of have a relatively lightweight understanding. So do you want to, before we get into the sort of the weeds of it, do you want to, I guess, explain how you sort of pitch the idea to, because you started out in the fine art marketplace. So explain what it is you've done these first couple of big projects, and how you have sort of explained them to people who might not know anything at the start of the conversation.
Yeah, it's so new. There's so much education in this space, and we have to educate two people. We have to kind of educate the artist on what it is that they're actually sort of embarking on, which is really fun, because thankfully we've got some fabulous relationships, and like all things new, you just go to the people that you love and you've got a great relationship with first. So Lisa Rayhana was one of the first people we went and saw. Now, Lisa's probably the best example I can give, because, arguably there's no one, more well-recognised internationally as a New Zealand artist. She's a video artist. Her work, In Pursuit of Venus, Infected, was at the Venice Biennale. It's this magnificent video work, and it's on at Te Papa at the moment. If Lisa's trying to sell a work of hers, she has to sell the hard drive. It has to get installed in your home, kind of plugged into a TV, and we just have to assume that there are only a certain number. So for NFTs to sort of come along and basically say, look, Lisa, you can now authenticate on the blockchain your works. It could be a scarce, limited edition. For her, it's a very easy notion, and really sort of, for her, it's what she's been in many ways waiting for. And then you've got other artists. Maybe the Rita Angus Estate's a great example. We've just released Cass last week, which was, arguably one of New Zealand's most famous landscape paintings. It's a magnificent work by an artist, and it's on permanent display, so it's something that can never actually be owned by anybody. Yet again, the Rita Angus Estate, their job is to pass on Rita's legacy to the next generation. And so to be able to do a very small, scarce, limited edition of Cass, I think it's kind of a magnificent example of what you can do with NFTs. And they went that one step further. Her great nephew, Quentin Angus, composed, he's a jazz musician, and he composed an original composition. So when you own Cass now, when you click play, you've got this magnificent sort of musical interlude underneath it, and you sort of, you're again getting that sort of response. So the artists are intrigued by the space. Then you've got artists who are painters. They may be painters, but they may have had a background in animation at art school. And they may have been painting for years, but they may have really loved the idea of animating some of the works that they've done. Or you've got artists like Heather Straka, who's largely in photography these days, but she studied filmmaking at university. So this idea now that she can sort of create a video work and authenticate it and prove that it's hers. So the artists have wholeheartedly embraced it, which has been wonderful to see. But the public, that's a whole other story. How do you take something which is something we've taken off the internet for free, content? We've just taken it ever since the advent of the internet and try to convince someone that it's now valuable. And how do you even enjoy it? And I think that's our journey really with Glorious. When we started, we realized that there was this mainstream opportunity, and I use that word favorably because it's just really how do we educate as many people as possible on this kind of new technology. And for me, the easiest way to describe it to people, an NFT is sort of, a digital certificate of authenticity, and you're owning a piece of digital art. The way that you would own a screen print edition from a gallery, you're now owning a digital version of that. And where do you enjoy that? I think the best place to enjoy that is, we've partnered with Samsung, a key partner for us, because that's where this kind of physical idea can come alive. They're framed TVs. I don't know if you've seen them before, but they're kind of magnificent. They look like a framed canvas on a wall. And to turn this from a head to a heart thing, you really need to be in someone's home. You need to I need to be at your house for dinner, and you need to sort of have this beautiful frame there and share the joy of a new NFT that you've collected. And I imagine I would love to think that we can create a company where people can collect NFTs the way they do vinyl. Things of real beauty, real value that you can change out. You might only buy one or two a year to start with, but ultimately you can change out the artwork in your home depending on your mood, and we've all been locked down for 2 years. Wall real estate in your house is sort of prime, and TVs always seem to take up prime real estate, and they're largely off most of the time, and they're sort of a big black box. And I think now we have this opportunity like we never have before to actually have artwork up on that screen that you can have an emotional response to and feel proud to own, and it can be a reflection of you and things that you love and your sort of journey into collecting art.
There's a lot that's sort of in that, right? Like, I think people are very attached to the ideas of the idea of physical objects, the fact that they're tangible. Like, if there's an edition of one of a painting, you kind of either have it or you don't. And there's been the confronting ideas of this, which actually feel like they're very compatible with art, which has been very challenging about form and so on. And transposing these things into a digital environment, where there are, in some ways, there are raging philosophical debates about, whether culture should be free or costed and so on. But and those are kind of wrapped up into this, and so people have a very strong response to it. Often they'll start from a reflexively negative place and then journey across. But the thing that I always come back to, the thing that really started to get me interested in it, was this idea, because I've been around artists in the broader sense of the world, for a long time, and that sense of other people profiting at their expense, or their inability to kind of turn the passion that people have for their work into a livelihood is such a, it's in there in musicians and fine artists and writers of all stripes, and the fact that the smart contracts, which you correct me if I'm wrong, but they basically allow for all future transactions around the ownership of an NFT, which can be a piece of music or a piece of writing or almost anything you can think of that can be digitized, that they can get a percentage of those sales baked in for the lifetime of that object, and that feels like one of the most kind of compelling things, and which is why I can imagine that when you take this to artists, it feels like it solves for something that felt like it was a forever broken element of the system of compensating people for their artistic endeavours.
Oh, I mean, once that penny dropped for me, I just sort of thought this is a total game changer. I mean, I have a son who I can very clearly see is going to be heading off down the route of an artist, and I have so many friends, and again, similar to you, we've worked around artists and musicians and chefs and wonderful creatives, for a lot of our careers, and we know actually how hard it is to make a living out of it. And it all looks like they're having the most amazing, wonderful time. But man, a lot of them are just working so hard, and it must be relatively soul destroying to paint a work, sell it for $1,500, and then your star ascends for whatever reason, over the next sort of 15 years, and then all of a sudden someone's paying $100,000 for it, and everyone's making money off it but you. And I know that for most of the artists, a real bone of contention, and that the smart contract can fix that. It's in perpetuity. So literally, not only do they make a whole lot more off the first sale than they would if they were selling through a gallery, but on the secondary sale, just to put some numbers around it, you've just bought a beautiful Gordon Walters NFT. When you sell it, you'll keep 90%, and that other 10% gets divvied up, and 7% of it goes over to the artist. So every single on sale for the rest of its life that goes to the artist, it's just a game changer.
So what you have deliberately chosen, there's two choices that you have made with Glorious that seem interesting to me, and we'll get to the broader current state of the NFT marketplace shortly and how you sort of interact with that. But those choices are, one, to focus on fine art and actually legacy fine art, artists who are no longer with us, and incredibly well-known works by them among your first, from Gordon Walters and from Rita Angus as your first project, but also like incredibly limited. Where 10,000 seems to be the number for many of these sort of post-Bored Ape type projects. You're talking about a tiny fragment of that number. Why those two choices for Glorious?
I think the NFT journey for us started when NBA Top Shot were doing editions of 10,000 or open editions, and they were selling for $10 or $20, and it was a sort of a closed ecosystem, and it was a trading card style sort of NFT. And then you had Beeple sell his work with Christie's, which was sort of 5,000 digital works, combined into a collage for some extravagant number, 69 million. I think that happened actually the week after I first heard about NFTs. And so where we kind of landed very quickly was, gosh, if you're not careful, here's the opportunity to immortalize something forever, effectively, on the blockchain. So if we're going to do this, let's focus on things that are unequivocally glorious, have incredible intrinsic beauty, worthy of admiration, from some of the finest collaborators that we can work with. If we're going to be in this game, let's work with those people, because we know, regardless of the NFT market, and we didn't really know what it even looked like at that point, or the crypto market itself, things which are new to us, not necessarily known. And so we thought, well, if we're going to ride this wave, or roller coaster, as it's probably more aptly named, we want to be at the fine end. We want to be at the just with real quality, because quality will endure. And so and then that's sort of where Glorious came out of. That Murray named it because we knew that we would be safest and probably just enjoy it the most on a personal level, working with just content that we absolutely loved. I mean, I personally, think that New Zealand art is just so extraordinary. It should have a bigger presence on the world stage, and just because of our geographical location, you've got to come here and actually experience it. Digital art can now, there's no reason now why, if we don't do our job properly, we can't find an audience for John Walsh's incredible work in Scandinavia, for example, and to be able to sort of take New Zealand art to the world. So we thought, well, we love our relationships with our artists from the Offering Project. We love the idea of sort of staying at that fine end. And then, too, just the idea of opening that up into sport, into legacy. These authentic digital masterpieces was sort of the tagline we arrived on, which was a masterpiece can be a Cass, it can be a Maho, but it can also be, just a glorious victory from Wimbledon or from, the Rugby World Cup. And so we thought, there's something really interesting about immortalizing joyous, glorious, magnificent content. So that's where we stayed. And that's, I'm so glad that's where we've landed, because the NFT landscape is, most people probably aren't engaging with it, but it's, as you said, collections of 10,000 of all sorts of things that, to me, I'm not going to comment on the value, because a lot of those memberships are around the community that comes with it. And I think there's real value there in community. But where we've kind of landed at the moment is these, editions that are small to start with, but ultimately the ones you're seeing, they're very prestige pieces. It's Rita Angus and Gordon Walters, and we're very, very proud of those. But ultimately, I want to make these as accessible for people as possible. What's $1,000 price point? What does an edition of 100 look like? And then, this moment too in time, we're realizing that we're borderless. So we don't just have to be a New Zealand art play. We've actually got relationships internationally. So we're talking with, I in some ways wish we were having this conversation 6 weeks from now, because we're just having the most amazing conversations around the world. And for some reason, they've just sort of seen what we're doing over here at Glorious. In some ways, we're in clear air, I guess. There's very little happening at this end of the market. And I know a lot of legacy brands and artists are sort of looking to see what's happening in this space. We've also chosen to not go on the Ethereum blockchain and to instead kind of go on a sort of carbon negative, climate positive blockchain out of New Zealand here called SenseNet. It's been a deliberate choice, but it's a real sort of core value for us. There is a lot of environmental messaging and responsibility that needs to sort of take place around NFTs, and we want to be, the quality of the artists that we are working with, to their own personal integrity and to our own. It's just important that we actually did the absolute best that we possibly could, which is why it's taken us a little longer to get to market from when we first announced.
So much. And on all of that, we're going to take a little break and come back with more from Tim shortly. The Fold is brought to you by O Media, making brands unmissable and public spaces better across Aotearoa, with over 4,000 out-of-home advertising sites nationwide across both street furniture and retail centres. I'm super grateful to O Media for enabling us to make unmissable connections with Kiwis.
Raising capital or taking your business to the world? Investment Fix has the lowdown on everything you need to make it happen. This season, we're exploring the US market, the opportunities it offers, what it takes to grow a business there, and the best way to approach investors. Join some of the superstars of the investment and business world as they share advice from their time in the US so you can make your mahi count in this massive market. The Investment Fix podcast, brought to you by Invest New Zealand. Tune in today.
Ready to rediscover the joys of cycling? With over 300 kilometres of cycle paths across Tāmaki Makaurau, jumping on your bike and going for a ride is such a fun way to discover the city from a different perspective. Cycling is getting more and more popular across Auckland, so now's a great time to join the hype and give cycling a go. Head to at.govt/cycling to find your nearest cycleway today.
So just before the break, we were discussing, those deliberate choices you've made and the way that they separate you from the sort of broad brushes of the current NFT marketplace. And as an observer, like there are, as you alluded to, like there is, I think, quite a common misconception that with the sort of addition of 10,000 post CryptoPunks, post Bored Ape, sort of long tail, that they are about the artwork, when in fact a lot of them tend to sell on the community. And they say that is where a lot of the value sits. You get into a Discord server, you can do things together. You're in, you can make products, you can have parties, it can operate like a sort of a decentralized Soho house, if you like. If that's what you're into, there is a sort of one end of it can feel quite country clubby. One end of it can feel like almost a semi-revolutionary way for communities to be built around the world. The thing that unites a lot of them, and this I actually include Bored Ape in this, is that the art seems really cheap and kind of it's unappealing to me personally. On top of all of that, there's also just this rug pulls and the general air of scamminess that pervades just the constant flow of these things. How do you, what in terms of the staff of Glorious, how do you stay on top of those things, and do you sort of fear that you're at the start of this enormous opportunity, but the whole thing it feels like to the minds of some being tainted by both the rug pull scam end of the market, but also, as you alluded to, the fact that the blockchain itself and crypto more specifically has become synonymous with a kind of a negative environmental externality that people claim to be trying to solve, but just doesn't seem to quite get solved.
On every level there, you can sort of see the challenge it is to actually sort of find your story through all of this kind of noise, and for us, that is the landscape for sure. We've got a lot of noise around, these memberships and what they what they propose to sell. Look, I think there's some incredible opportunities in those memberships. And someone said to me once, it's a little bit like buying. If you can think of a world like a Fortnite, for example, and there's 10,000 memberships to Fortnite, and you buy one, you're not just buying. You're buying into a whole new universe. You're actually buying into a whole new amount of IP, and you're almost one of the owners, of that new sort of metaverse, I guess. And so that's what a lot of people are buying into. They're buying into there's a speculative aspect, I think, for most people. Which is, a little, you can't ignore that. And then you've got this idea of identity, the fact that we are heading towards a place where more and more people are spending time online and their values are in communities that they're finding online, whether that's people who share the same vaccine position or QAnon position. There are people are finding their people and other people online. And that's why these communities are so valuable. Now, the art around them, yeah, I'm kind of with you. I think maybe because I've seen them so often now, these sort of crypto punks and Bored Apes in particular, it's sort of starting to, I'm realizing that they're the zeitgeist. So 2022, we will look back on those and we'll go, this was where it moved. This is where the needle moved. And this is where Christie's and Sotheby's decided to embrace this new form of fine art. So I actually think those two in particular will outlive a lot of the noise that's going on. But I would say that I'm probably not alone in saying this. No one really knows quite where we're heading, but I'd have to say that this sort of junky, speculative nonsense that sort of pervades the marketplace, they'll just all die and disappear. How do we sort of stay above it? And again, it comes back to why did we choose on masterpieces? Why did we choose on fine art? We thought, well, they endure. They're not going anywhere. They're magnificent if we can keep the edition sizes low, if we can, honour our artists in doing so, then we're going to be okay. But that's one part of your question. I guess the other is the environmental aspect. I think the Ethereum blockchain was never designed for NFTs, this many NFTs to live on it. So it's highly unsustainable. And they're working very hard towards sort of a 2.0 version, which is, an entirely different model for them. And I really hope they get there. And I think if they do, they'll be the largest sort of company in the world and they'll revolutionise the way we all interact. But until that happens, there's an opportunity for New Zealand companies like Centrality and SenseNet to sort of, show a different alternative in a different way. So taking the high ground is really hard, I guess, in this space, but we're really up for the challenge. As I said before, by taking that high road, we're actually attracting incredible international sort of, talent who are sort of wanting to partner with us. So I feel really, really good about where we've landed. But yeah, there's a lot of noise. I mean, a lot of my family members even are sort of, they don't even really understand what it is that I do or what the space is. We have a founding membership, the glorious founding membership. It's there's 1,000 of those. And again, the whole point of that founding membership, taking a little bit from Bored Apes and the like, is that this idea of community for people who adopted, who were a digital pioneer, I guess, who supported us from an early stage. We want to just take them on our journey. We want to take them on our journey, and we want to reward them magnificently, surprise and delight them with beautiful and evolving artwork, access to our releases, social events, and every now and then just surprise them with beautiful artworks that they can keep for themselves or sell if they want to. And I think that for us just reminds us what it is that we're doing, that there's a community of people out there that that we can create, that we can sort of take this, digital art story to. So, I mean, that kind of naturally leads into the discussions about Web3. And again, there are whole podcast series and multi-essay series out there which only scratch the surface of it. And a lot of it, the sort of the fun of it is also the downside of it. So much of it feels very theoretical, very much vaporware at the moment. But the idea of trying to build something new that solves for a lot of the known issues of the kind of corporatized, owned by the pipes Web 2.0 era is very attractive
to me. So tell me more about this glorious membership and about the extent to which that interacts with the nascent Web3 and how you as a company are thinking about what feels to me like, when I think about it, it feels like almost like a new form of capitalism that is able to route around some of the things that have been pernicious known problems that we haven't really been able to address in sort of quote-unquote Western democracies. Tell me about the memberships and how all that stuff interacts with these big ideas.
Yeah, I think, at its simplest, I don't know if we've got a huge agenda with what we're sort of trying to go out there and achieve with our membership. I think there is an honest approach to what we're trying to do, which is that no one really quite knows what the space is doing, but we know that it's inevitable. We know that ultimately more and more and more of our life is going to be spent in digital worlds, whether that be what Mark Zuckerberg's proposing with sort of glasses that we put on, or whether it's actually, I don't know.
Hope not.
It freaks me out. It certainly, certainly doesn't get my juices flowing every day. I mean, even the idea that...
He's just not a responsible custodian of anything. And I don't think when you've got something that he has made that is effectively, I think, is in the process of like becoming a sort of a failed digital state, the idea that he would then be the person to create the next one, I just don't see why as a species we would sign up for that. But that's just my specific take.
I'm 100% with you. 100% with you. I don't look where we've ended up with Facebook. Look what we've ended up with, sort of the division that sort of causes, and the idea that we're going to extend that even further into these sort of fake versions of ourselves online, with various clothing things. I mean, that, to me, I'm just not even slightly interested in that. I mean, you asked before, do I keep up to date with all of that, or do my team keep up to date with all of that? In our team, we've got people who are really active collectors of NFTs, and power to them. And I learn a lot from them without actually having to go and buy them myself. And again, they're immersed in those worlds. They're on Discord channels all day long. They're on Roblox. They're looking at Decentraland for different real estate options. And where can we build our glorious kind of, metaverse? Where can we build our glorious museum? And look, will glorious NFTs live in the metaverse? 100%, absolutely. If that's where we're heading, then wherever we're heading, let's make sure we've got beautiful content there and beautiful quality there. So, let's make it a place of real beauty. Do I want to spend all of my time there? Hell no. That's not interesting to me. And that's certainly not a goal of what we're trying to do. We're just trying to immortalize art. We're just trying to pass on to the next generation and give them an opportunity to collect art, and to enjoy it, and to really look after our artists in doing so. So in terms of the sort of political and socio-political questions around where NFTs are heading, I mean, yeah, it's possibly very scary where it's heading, and at the same time, it's inevitable. And so if we're going to all go there together, then let's just make sure we're doing something with real integrity, real authenticity, and community of people around you to support each other in it.
So I'm conscious that we're running short of time, but the thing that I want to get from you finally is basically a sense of where this is going, how the market grows. Because what you've done right now, I'd like to admire about it, but it unavoidably sits in the category of something that is very much available to and targeting elites and people of very considerable means who can create who can make what is on some level a speculative investment or bet on this category being what it presents as being in some lights.
Sure.
The thing that was amazing about what Dapper Labs and Top Shots did for the NBA and now UFC and so on was that big democratizing effect that it had and making it accessible to more people. Now, you've made references to editions of 100 or 1,000. Is there and right now, both the editions that you've done, almost brilliant kind of content marketing for this thing amongst a particular group. But then there is a wider thing of, for this to be truly realize that potential of it to democratize and make sense of some of these kind of known issues with both society and NFTs, it needs to have a way of going much broader than that. How do you see that playing out? And is that can you still be glorious and about masterpieces while also being accessible to everyone?
Yeah, it's a great challenge for us, and we're at the very beginning of our journey. You know, we're 2 weeks old, and we've decided to sort of go out with these legacy plays to start with, but ultimately, you know, the intention is that we make this as accessible to people as possible. It's certainly not designed to be elitist. It's designed to be glorious. It's in all its beauty and its accessibility. But it's just the quality that actually determines what we release. There will be times, absolutely, where an artist will come along and they'll say, I actually want to do an edition of 100,000 of this, and I want to give it away for free. Will you do that? And I'll say, that fills my heart with joy. Absolutely, we'll do that. Another one will come along and say, hey, look, you know, with everything going on in Ukraine at the moment, I want to create a new work, and I want everything that we raise from that to go to this particular fund. And I say glorious. And I think that's where you can expect to go with us. You know, that's core values to who we are. So it's certainly not an elite play, even though we're starting off in that place, because it's those stories are, and this idea of immortalizing content from estates and passing on to the next generation is really, you know, valid and a really kind of core part of who we are. But at the same time, we wanted to take people on a journey into, you know, beautiful worlds and with artists. And the artist, we work collaboratively so closely. You know, what is the goal of the artist here? What is their intention? You know, when you're dealing with an estate, you've got to be protective. You've got to sort of create things that keep the value there. Others just want to explore different ideas, different mediums, and we're here for that too.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Tim. I do think the space is fascinating, and you are participating in a very deliberate and considered way, and be excited to watch what you run.
Oh, cheers, mate. Thanks so much.
That was Tim Harper, the CEO of Glorious on the Fold. I want to thank Vodafone for sponsoring us, Te Ahe Butler for recording, engineering, editing my digital masterpieces. I want to thank Jane Yee for her superb work running the Spin-Off Podcast Network. If you haven't listened to the episode Gone by Lunchtime with Simon Bridges from a couple of weeks back, get amongst. It's very, very good. And become a Spin-Off member. You make fun stuff possible. The more members we have, the more stuff we can do. Really enjoying that at the moment. So, yeah, thanks. That was The Fold, brought to you by our partners at oOh!media, making brands unmissable and public spaces better across Aotearoa. Huge thanks to oOh!media for sponsoring this episode of The Fold and enabling us to make unmissable connections with Kiwis.
K-pop to me means more than just listening to music. It's learning to be myself.
The Spin-Off's new documentary, K-Pollies, follows 3 Pacific youth obsessed with K-pop. In a one-off documentary, see what they've found in Korean pop culture and how they bridge it with their own.
When you start dressing, looking different, everyone side-eyes you. But in K-pop, they're just like, no, like celebrate yourself.
Watch K-Pollies today at thespinoff.co.nz/videos. Made with the support of New Zealand On Air. The Spin-Off Podcast Network.